I want Haejin to talk a little bit about growing up and then how you've come to do what you do.
Yeah. So born and raised in South Korea. And I had this privilege of growing up in a home where me and my younger brother, it's just two of us, had all the freedom to explore different kind of things, including our faith. And although my father's side was not a Christian family, and of course my father had to promise my grandfather of my mom's side that he will go to church to marry my mom. But I had this beautiful legacy of faith from my mom's side. So although the Christian history in South Korea is rather short, it's about 120 years or something like that, our family had a privilege of knowing Jesus and receiving Jesus as our savior. So because of that heritage, I grew up in a home where there was worship almost every day, people coming to receive healing prayers and sharing meals and fellowship, Bible studies, and all of those things. So I grew up in that kind of environment where Christian life and fellowship was very close in proximity. And so I give a lot of, this is also God's grace, right? Because where you're born into and what kind of heritage that you get has nothing to do with your merit. But I had this a childhood where I witnessed my mom, my grandma, my great aunt, and my great grandmother praying for the family, praying for others, and had this kind of intense, almost kind of we'll call it extraordinary, but a little crazy. They can look like nuts because they will, for example, will have such a heart for people who are who don't know Jesus yet. They will fast for 40 days to pray for someone's salvation, to evangelize, and to share the gospel with them. And that's the kind of, in a way, loving your neighbor lived out in a way that was whenever there's an opportunity for them. So I grew up with that kind of environment, and then my mom, my parents decided to send my brother to America to study when he was like middle school. And interestingly enough, when I heard that news, the very first thought that came to my mind was, I cannot grow up without my brother because it would be so not fun. Who am I going to play with? And that's my only sibling. So I wanted to go with him. I wanted to follow him. And as a very young teenager, I didn't even think about leaving home or leaving the parents, but I needed my buddy and my playmate. So I begged, and I was in middle school at the time, and of course my mom said no. We cannot afford to send you, and there's a stigma against girls studying abroad and all of those things back then. So I said what a very good Christian child would do. I said to Mom, I'll pray about it. And then I said, well, this is a very important decision, so I'm going to fast and pray. And although, of course, I've seen these great examples of fasting and praying and evangelizing, I had no idea what that took. So I basically just did not eat, did not drink at all. This young child. And so on the third day, my mom saw me, and then she thought that I was going to die. So she gave up. So I basically did a hunger strike with the label of fasting and praying. But I did have a prayer back then that I don't know why, but I said in my prayer to God, and because as a young child growing up in this kind of environment, the fact that God is the creator and our savior, that actually makes sense to me. What I didn't know was that God is also our Lord. And, it was very kind of a concept that I couldn't understand as a young child. But I did pray in middle school, God, if you send me to America to study and to live with my brother, I will become an international lawyer for you. And that was my prayer. And I had not met any lawyers, or I didn't know what that really meant. But I think I had a sense of that means I am going to be advocating on behalf of someone who need help. So to me, I think seeing, my grandmothers and, my mom and, just kind of loving their neighbors in their own way, I think I had a sense of like, I want to do something similar where I can be a voice for someone else. And of course, it was really a vague idea for me at the time. And so I was able to come to America with my brother as a teenager. I was in high school by then, and got to study. And we decided to stay. So I went through high school, college, and law school here in the States and became a lawyer afterwards.